9, 8.
You're watching
7,
Experience Comic Culture and Sales.
5,
Streaming live daily to
4,
Facebook, YouTube,
3,
Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Hope you had a safe and awesome weekend. As you can see, Miss Jen is not here today. She's just getting back from San Diego Comic-Con. So you're stuck with me for right now. We got a real awesome show today. Feels like we're keeping it in-house because we're going to be talking to Dan, the man with a million stories, Wickline, and the greatest showman in modern comics, Onrie Kompan. We're going to be talking about their crowdfunded comics that they got going on right now. Should be an awesome show. Stick around. This is Talkin' Shop. All right, everyone. As you can see, I don't work on the cold opens very often, so very quick, because I really want to jump right into this. We're going to have both of our guests on at the same time. It's going to be kind of a panel thing. We got Dan Wickline. We got Onrie Kompan. Guys, how we doing?
Good.
Fantastic.
Awesome. First of all, very awesome to be on the screen with Onrie and Dan at the same time. Dan and I were talking earlier, man, it feels like we haven't been on screen together in forever.
I know.
Dan, I feel like this is the first time we've actually been on screen together.
I think it is too. I even made a graphic to post today that basically set together for the first time. So
yeah, it's like finally like, you know, a Marvel and DC crossover you guys have been waiting for.
Yes.
Exactly.
So
what do you want to talk about today, Jay?
I want to talk about y'all's two awesome books that are out right now. Now, one of them is a backer kit one, which I'm not overly familiar with backer kit. Dan, that would be Karma #2 from you.
Right.
What is the difference? Is there a big difference between Kickstarter and a backer kit?
There's not from a standpoint of view of the consumer. You know, it's, you know, you go in, you back it, it works goals, it has stretch goals. All of that's about the same. Where it's different is that Backer Kit is proactively trying to bring comic people in. They're doing this thing called Comictopia, where they have 27 different crowdfunded projects tied together. So not every publisher has a co-publisher in the sense that, like Karma with Dynamite is linked to American mythology in their book. And if you buy both of our books, then you get an extra reward. It's a set of tarot cards featuring each of the main characters. And if you buy X number, I think it's 5 or 6 different Comictopia titles, then you get an actual comic book that ties all the books together. So they're doing a lot of stuff to cross-promote these. There's also like a landing page which tells you, you know, how they're doing trending-wise, you know, based on the number of backers or number of dollars, how they're doing reaching goals. I think 17 of the 27 books have already hit goal. So that's the big difference, is that Backer Kit is actively trying to recruit comic people and create a kind of a cross promotional aspect, which Kickstarter really doesn't do.
Very nice. So this is going to be a question for both of you. Now, these are both for Dan Volume 2, for Onrie Issue 2 of these two books. So for folks who maybe didn't see or know about the first one of each, could you kind of give them like your elevator pitch for it, and where do we find these characters in this next adventure?
Let Onrie go first.
Oh, you want me to go first this time? Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right. So Warlion is it's entering issue 2, and we tried to avoid using the issue number 1 and 2 for the campaign as much as possible. So I just called it Warlion Returns. But basically, the story itself is about an old revolutionary and his daughter going after the tyrant that destroyed their lives and now controls their city. And it's a 3-issue series. Each book is 48 pages in length, so it's double the size of your standard comic. And we're now back with issue 2, and kind of like to answer Jay's question, it's more like trying to make this seem like it's its own thing rather than saying, okay, we're back with issue 2 now, because that's what always happens. You have like a really strong issue 1, and then everybody's kind of like, they're back for issue 2, and not as much interest. So I wanted to try and give this campaign a shot in the arm, so to speak, so that it would, stand on its own 2 feet and not be compared to the first one. And it would just be a good entry point as well for new readers to come on and check it out. So it's a learning experience for sure. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it, with having the number 2 in there. I just wanted to try and do something different, just because, I know that that's a challenge for a lot of campaigns, is putting in the issue 1 and 2. So, I tried some things. Some things worked, some things didn't. Some things I had to retool while I was in the middle of the campaign. Honestly, when I'm looking at the trajectory of where this campaign is going, it's pretty much exactly where I expect it to be. So it's like, I don't know if anything I would have done different would have changed that. Maybe it would have made it better. Maybe it would have. Dan, what do you think? What's your take?
Well, with Karma coming in on the second volume, let's start off with how all this started. Karma is an idea. Nick Barucci came to me and said, there's a lot of books out there doing these kind of, he referred to as slice of life, but basically these, romantic, erotic adventure stories, like Stepan Sedgwick's Sunstone or Fine Print, Mirka Andolfo's Sweet Paprika. They're doing these kind of adult themed stories, and he wanted to know if I had one in me. And I spent 20 years as a model photographer, so I had a few stories and some bizarre incidents that I thought I could interweave them into basically what would be a rom-com type thing, and started putting that together for the first book. The whole idea is that it's a kind of a straight-laced photographer. He's not a fashion photographer. He's not a model photographer or glamour. He does advertising shots. He makes potatoes look like ice cream, and so that they can take photos of it for ads, that type of thing. He knows how to make batteries look best on a camera. And he gets an opportunity to fill in for a buddy of his with this up-and-coming model named Karma, and they have a little meet-cute situation. They end up starting to work together more and more, and the relationship grows from there. So the whole first volume is them coming together and growing together as friends and as a couple, or in a relationship, and getting to know each other. But also there's a lot of erotic moments, and there's a bondage photo shoot. There's an orgy scene, which is all part of Karma's lifestyle that Alex is brand new to. So that's kind of what the first one is about, where you said, where do the characters pick up in volume 2? Literally naked in bed. Page 1, naked in bed. And it turns out there's a third person. So it just goes from there immediately. And the second volume is about the outside pressures on a relationship. And I've been using this analogy of Taylor Swift and
Travis Kelce, in that, the pressures from outside, how popular they are, all these people coming in. It's kind of like that. Alex isn't used to that life. Karma is, but because, Travis is used to being a football star, not worldwide pop star level. And that's kind of what's going on with that, but Alex's life and both of their lives start changing with people leaving their lives, losing jobs, having to make career changes, new opportunities, all the things that real life relationships go through.
but in the view of a brand new relationship as they're trying to make it work. And then I throw in this former child star turned pop icon into the middle of it that really just kind of causes chaos.
Awesome. So we got a little bit of where Dan got his inspiration from the book for his book. Onrie, what was your inspiration for Warlion?
Warline was born out of the COVID lockdowns. It was sort of like once I got news that a convention that I was hoping to attend was canceled as a result of like spike cases, I was just like, all right, I'm going to make a new comic, because that's what you do when, you know, the economy sucks and everything is just going to hell, is you make a new comic. And I took some time to like read a bunch of books that I found inspiring, and then I kind of looked at what was going on in my life and what I was feeling, and I think kind of like what Dan was just saying, you know, you write what you know, and so I was kind of looking around and looking at the aspects of my life, what kinds of things that I want to share with my readers through these characters about myself, and that's really where Warline came from. So the book itself is actually a tribute to my stillborn child. And one thing I didn't add that I think Dan did a really great job with, you know, it's like we're back from volume 2. Where are we with the characters? Warline 1 sets up everything about the relationship between the main character and his daughter. And in issue 2, we find out that he hasn't been honest with her about something really important. And he's going through this real crisis of conscience while coming face to face with something very terrifying from his past. And where it will leave his relationship with his daughter at the end of everything is going to be something that they will never be able to come back from. Their relationship will be forever changed after this point. And this is really the issue that I really wanted to get to. And for me, I feel like, you know, with everything, when you look at any story, you know, you can't just say, okay, here's number ones always have the challenge of establishing everything. It's always hard with the number 1. But issue 2 and those issues beyond is really where the story starts to take shape. You're only setting the chess pieces in place with your issue 1. Issue 2s and beyond are really when you start to do cool things. Like, you know, Dan, going back to your point, it's like you couldn't get to the point where your characters are at the beginning of volume 2 if there was no volume 1 at all. And the volume 2, you know, the second issue is really where things amp up. I couldn't get to the point that I wanted to with this series if we didn't have issue 1. So now that we're here with issue 2, the story is really going to ramp up, and it's going to ramp up in a way that, again, is going to change everything from what we do going forward with this story. And I'm really excited about that.
You know, I tell people about both of y'all's books. They're very great in their own ways because they're so vastly different from each other. Like for Karma, I've told people, I was like, yeah, there's a lot of sexiness to it, but there's also a lot of substance to it. Like you could take out the nudity and it would still be a great read. Like it would still be a great book. And for Warlion, Onrie, I had this conceived notion of what I was getting when I got Warlion, and what you actually did with the book was surprising in the best way. Like what I thought your book was going to be about was kind of that, but very different than what I thought it was going to be. So both of y'all did fantastic jobs on both of these books. Like, again, it's so hard, especially with not safe for workbooks like with Dan. It's very hard to not get lost in, well, this is just a booby book. There's nothing to it. It's just for boobs. And there are some people that with Warline, it's the violence. It's just violence. There's nothing to it. And both of y'all have definitely put put people on notice that you can do books like this, and still, Onrie's book could have no violence and still be a great story. Dan's book can have no sex, no sexy things, and it'd still be a great story. Do you find that when people put you in a box like that, like, because Onrie also does like, and I always get this name wrong, Yisu Shin?
Yeah, you got it. Nailed it.
You know, and then, you know, Dan's wrote a lot of Xenoscope stuff. Is there ever a time where somebody's like, well, all Onrie knows is how to write violence, and all Dan knows is how to write, you know, sex stories? Has anybody ever said that to you, Dan? Like, is that all? Because I know you write so much more than that.
What's funny is when I started, I got tagged as being a horror writer because of the stuff I was doing at Zenoscope. But before that, I was good friends with Steve Niles and worked with him on a bunch of projects like 30 Days of Night and Savage. I did some stuff with Ben Templesmith, and I started getting pegged as a horror writer. And it's like, you know, I got in the industry because I wanted to write superheroes. You know, I'm the guy that wants to write for Marvel and DC, or, you know, I one of the happiest things for me was Jim Valentino letting me write Shadowhawk. So yeah, you kind of get pegged. And it's a lot of people who aren't used to the comic industry, you know, because outside of the comic industry, if you're a writer, you're kind of a genre writer. If you're, you know, Stephen King writes horror. Jim Butcher writes urban fantasy, you know, down the line. I can't think of anybody else's names, but you know, they get locked into these things, whether it's political thrillers, sci-fi, stuff like that. You become known for your genre, and in comics, it doesn't really happen. You know, it's kind of all over the place. You know, you write this, you write that. Oh, thank you, Triple B. He liked my Purgatory novel. So yeah, it's weird when it happens in comics because no one's ever going to go up to Cullen Bunn and go, "Oh, you can't write comedy because you do horror." But outside, it's normal. So it does kind of filter in sometimes, and you start getting pigeonholed.
I'll tell you a really fun experience I had once. I was set up at this Korean festival, and this lady came up to me and she goes, "I won your book at a raffle, and when I opened it up, I was so offended by everything. This book should be banned, and you're awful, and I hate you," and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, thank you. I'm like, you know, there is something that says on the cover that this is suggested for mature readers. She's like, "That's not big enough. It needs to be bigger than that." She's totally like went off on me. And that was the only time someone confronted me about writing violent stuff. But I've also had people come up to me, and that's the thing, like with superheroes, I think there comes a different challenge of like, how well do you know this character and their continuity, and how truthful are you to it? I think the same is true of historical stuff. And I remember being at New York Comic Con one year and seeing this Korean lady. She was sitting there looking at my banners, and I walked up to her and said, "Can I help you? And you know, would you like to hear more about the series?" And she goes, "You know, you portrayed Yi Sun-shin as being this commander who was, you know, like spearheading battles against the Japanese, but he wasn't. He was actually in the back while his men did all the fighting. And this is very historically inaccurate." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, so you were around 450 years ago. That's wonderful." You know, like, and there's really nothing you can do about that. You know, it's just sometimes that's just what happens. But I've never really been pigeonholed as a writer. And that is one of the reasons why I decided to do Warline, was because I wanted to show that I could break those boundaries. Like, and I want to say I'm really happy about the fact that each of my projects are different. Like Yi Sun-shin, yes, it is a violent book, but Mark's story about my grandfather's life, that's a lot less violent. I mean, it has some war scenes in it, but that's not the meat of the book. You know, It's a very emotional and powerful story about what my grandfather went through during World War II. And I would say the same is true of Warline. It's not historical. It's science fiction. It's something completely different. And that's something I always want to try and challenge myself to do is something different. I also worked on, I got to work on a Tales from the Crypt story. And I got to dabble in horror a little bit, and I recently did a kids graphic novel that's based around Greek mythology, and there's no blood in that at all. So, I think it's easy to get pigeonholed. I can certainly tell you, I put violence in my books because I like that stuff, So I write what I know, but I also write what I want to see on the racks, and what I would want to, see exist.
Nice. So, going back to Dan with the backer kit, Dan, is there because I haven't actually been able to check it out. Is there stretch goals and things like that, like with Kickstarter? Did they do anything like that?
There are. There will be. Once you hit your goal, like we've got plans, just like with the Kickstarter one, there's some special trading cards that will be unlocked at certain points. We're planning a stretch goal that turns all the graphic novels into hardcovers. So that's the basic idea. So yeah, it's got all that stuff in it. And like I said, the only additions is there are cross promotional stuff that you get if you buy, back 2 books that are connected, or, 5, I think it's 5 or 6 books in Comictopia, then you get something else. So it's all pretty neat stuff.
Is there a stretch goal on your campaign that you're like, that's really cool?
The hardcover part.
Yeah.
We hit that on the first volume. So most of the books are hardcover.
Mm-hmm.
And we did get the same cover artist back, which was awesome. We got Stepan Sejic back. We got Mirka Andolfo back. We got Michael DePascal back. And there's 2 versions of his cover, one regular, one naughty. So it really does start feeling like it's connected. And so I really want to hit that hardcover goal, because I want people to be able to have the hardcovers side by side on their shelves and stuff like that. But yeah, that's all depends on the goals we hit.
Awesome. How about you, Onrie? You got a stretch goal in your campaign that you're just like, that's really cool?
Well, since we haven't hit any of our stretch goals yet,
Well,
the coolest stretch goal will be unlocked once we fund, which is a chance for everybody to partake in a panel with all of the creators from the book. And this is going to be after fulfillment is done, which should be very fast with this, because we already have most of the books. They're printed up. I already have them here at my warehouse. So really, it's an opportunity for everybody to kind of learn a little bit more about the series and to with the creative team about the decisions. It's going to be like the spoiler-filled panel where everybody comes together and gets to talk with the fans about what we're working on and everything. So I'm really excited about that.
Cool. So real quick, everyone in the chat right now, thanks for being here. The links for both are going to be in the chat. Go and check them out. Here's what I tell people all the time. Even if you can't back, or maybe it's just not for you, share it out. You never know who on your friends list is going to be like, I would have never known about this unless you shared it. Sharing really is caring, folks, and that means just as much to some of these people as backing the actual project. So make sure you check those links out.
Yeah, share it out, because you never know what's going to attract the people on your friends list. I mean, your grandma may really be into bondage, and you don't know that. So Karma may be just the book she wants.
And I'd never want to know that. So, what was I going to say? So there's something weird too. And most of the time my Facebook page is nothing but experience stuff and sharing Kickstarters and crowdfunded stuff. does the algorithm, as somebody sitting from the outside looking in, does the algorithm really kind of like stifle indie folks when it comes to sharing to things like Facebook and things?
From what I know, a lot of people are having issues with if you put the link in the initial post, it's supposed to not get shared as much. I work with another company called Ethereal, and they kickstart all their books. And they've got one up right now called If It Hops. It's the fourth issue of it. And they put up a bunch of posts on different accounts and stuff, and suddenly they're all disappearing. You know, and they're just being taken down. And so there is a lot of stuff going on. I don't necessarily think Facebook is that friendly when it comes to promoting stuff like this. You do it, you know, I hit all my social media for this particular book because it ties into my days as a photographer. I've been going out and posting different shots that I did with models over the years, you know, every day a different model and linking to it. And I'm hitting Facebook's threads, you know, X and Instagram. But the response doesn't really seem to be stretching out that far. You know, you get maybe a dozen views on it on Instagram or on this or that. So yeah, I don't think the algorithm is really helping that much.
I wish I knew how that thing worked, to be honest with you. There are times that there are some awesome projects out there, and I don't find out about them until they're already done. So, and that's upsetting. But so how important is it for both of y'all to get together with other creators and do things like panels with, like, Onrie, not this past Tuesday, but the week before, you had a panel full of guests talking about their books. How important is it for indie creators to be like one unit when it comes to stuff like this?
Oh, I think it's so important. I think it is so important because we really are a community, and you know, everybody's going through the same thing, and it's tough out there right now. This has not been a good year for a lot of creators and crowdfunding. Even though you're seeing campaigns fund, you know, we have a lot of things that we're contending with right now. You know, I talked about this yesterday, actually. I've said it so many times now, it's driving me crazy. You know, inflation, the elections, and changes in the industry, all these things are affecting people's decisions when it comes to backing campaigns. So I've had to modify my own expectations for what I can do. And, you know, I've really adapted this mentality of bronze medal thinking. And I got this idea from a guided meditation that I did, which, you know, talked about how, you know, when athletes compete, you know, it's always the person who hits first place is always happy because they won. But the person who hits second place tends to be a lot more unhappy than the person who gets into third place, because the person who was in second place was almost at first place but didn't make it. The person who you know, got third at least qualified. And when I look at where I am now with this campaign, or just where I am right now in my career, I am very happy with my achievements, because I started out being told I was never able to have a career. I would never be able to get to where I'm at now. And so I've gotten to this point because of the efforts that I did. And that's really what I focus on. And I think the same applies to every single creator. It's like we're all on our own journeys, and we can help each other. We can all you know, learn from each other. I learned a lot from what other creators have been doing throughout this period, and in order to get more attention on what they're doing. And it's a tough marketplace. I mean, we're not just competing against, I wouldn't even say we're competing against each other, because even Dan and I, it's like our projects have nothing in common with each other at all. Like, they're just, the only commonality they have is they're both books. But other than that, it's like it's two different things. So why wouldn't we help each other? You know, like just because someone doesn't want to read Warline, I want to keep them from reading Dan's book. Like that's stupid. You know, we want to encourage each other. We want to help each other out. So I actually think it's really important to bring creators together and to help each other out.
Yeah, we're gonna for Comictopia, we're gonna do a live stream on Wednesday at I think it's 3 p.m. Eastern, and we've got it set up. And we thought, well, when I did a live stream last week, I had a couple creators pop in to say hi. I'm like, why don't we just do a live stream with a couple other people? Mentioned that to the Comictopia or the Backer Camp people. They loved it. So on Wednesday, we're having a live stream. That's going to be myself, Fabrice Sopoleski from Fair Square Comics, Fish Lee from Mr. Fish Comics, Dave Franchini from Zenoscope, also Sarah White from Laguna Studios, and we're trying to get Pat Shand, who's doing books for American mythology and like every other publisher on the planet. But, you know, and so we're going to have a group chat for about an hour talking about our books and stuff too, kind of like what we're doing right now. But so, yeah, I think that's those are great things to do, because if you know me and you know my stuff and you come on and you're like, oh, I didn't know they were doing, Fair Square was doing this, or I didn't know Zenoscope was collecting Cinderella, or, you know, or what, we don't have them coming on the chat. I'd love to, but Steve Rude is one of the people doing Comictopia. He's collecting a Nexus book, or making a Nexus collection. You know, Steve Rude's got his own great fan base. Imagine them being then filtered out to these other books as well.
That's tremendous. That is tremendous. So, folks in the chat, if you have any questions, by all means, it is an interactive show. If you got any questions for Onrie or Dan, pop them in the chat. I'll be sure to ask. You know, Jay's not known for his interview skills, so
I think you're doing great, man. I don't know why you're giving yourself some hard time.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's like talking with old friends is what I tell people. Like the experience feels like that to me. Like we got so many great people, and it's so awesome to be able to do like an in-house thing where we have creators as a part of the experience. And that's just awesome to me. I love the fact that you and Dan haven't been on the show before, I don't think, until now.
Right.
So getting that little mix in there, that's super awesome to me.
Yeah. It was bound to happen at some point.
Yeah. I think we were on a conference call together once, and that's about
Yes, that was it.
The meetings.
Yeah. And I don't think we live that far away either.
Where are you?
I'm in Southern California.
Oh, well, I'm in Chicago, so we're kind of close.
Oh, okay.
Well, here's a question for you, Dan. Were you at San Diego this weekend?
I was not. I've done San Diego a lot, and I'm kind of like I've got some stuff going on health wise. It's like, yeah, the Baton Death March going through San Diego Con is a little much for me right now. Maybe in a year or two I'll be back to it, but yeah, and it's pretty cool. Having done it like 20 times between 95 and 2015, I think I went 20 years straight. It's taxing, and it's gotten so out of control. I remember the last time I went, the hotel right next door, I was having lunch in it, and my agent at the time called me and said, I've got these people I want you to meet, but they've only got about 20 minutes. Can you get over here? And I'm sitting in the hotel restaurant like, no, there is no way for me to go from the hotel next door through the crowd to the middle of the convention center in anything other than 45, 50 minutes. Just too many people, too crowded. And this was before COVID. I couldn't even imagine being that close together and stuff now, you know. So I figure when I get back to doing conventions, they're going to be the little tiny ones.
I like the tiny shows. I like the tiny shows. I'll tell you, I mean, you get, I mean, I big crowds help sales because you got more people. But sometimes when you get at a show like San Diego, where it's like just so freaking packed that you can't get anyone to stop. Like Saturday is by far one of the most rough days to wave someone down. Even though there's a lot of people, everybody's just got a destination, and it's really kind of like a metaphor for Kickstarter. It's like you see people like rushing from. They all got to get to the Hasbro booth because there's like some exclusive over there. It's like they don't have that 30 seconds for you. Yeah. And then there's just like the zombie walk where there's just so many people on the floor and people can't even like stop. They're just walking at like the slowest pace. I remember last year I wanted to go stop by at the Boom booth because I wanted to pick up a book from there. And I don't think I've ever seen this in my life. It was just so many people were crowding the floor that you couldn't walk after a certain point. It was just like everything just stops.
Yep. And
yeah, I wasn't there this year because I didn't have a booth, but I mean that was just one of those situations where it was like, yeah, this is getting to the point where it's just so packed that people don't even have room to walk anymore.
And the mindset is very different. I'm going to liken it to another show I used to do a lot. I haven't done it in a couple of years, but the Phoenix Comic-Con.
Oh, yes. That's a great show.
Yeah, love the Phoenix Comic-Con. First time I ever went, I called up and I said, hey, I'm going to be in the area visiting a friend. Can I get a pro badge? I want to come in and check out the show. They said, we really don't have pro badges. You want a table? And I found myself working the show, and they put me inside next to Jimmy Palmiotti, Amanda Connor, and Josh Middleton. I'm like, yeah, this is good for last minute. So I became big fans of those guys. But I would go to San Diego Con, and the only thing people were looking for were the freebies. What are you giving away? What can I, and they've got their big bags and they're loading it up with all the free stuff. They're not even looking at it. They're just grabbing it and moving on to the next table. You go to Phoenix, at least back when I was going, I would sell out. Literally, whatever I took, Zetascope books, sell out. Novels, sell out. Because people walked in there with the idea that they were buying. They had money and they were there to spend it. Freebies didn't matter, but that's my big thing against San Diego is it's gotten so far away from actually being a Comic-Con that I don't know it's worth exhibiting there anymore.
I mean, I don't know. I still think I still think that there are enough people there to where if you have the fortitude to go through it, because it is an ordeal. Like what you said, if you have the fortitude to do it, I think it could still be a lucrative experience. The last time I did San Diego was last year, and I had my best show ever. But it was still it was just a rough experience, and I don't want to do it like that again. What happened was I sublet space from a retailer, and that was how I got in every single year that I've done it. I've been doing it for 10 years now, and 2 days before the show last year, I contacted the dealer, and he said, just to confirm everything was fine, he was like, I just bought a new collection, and is there anywhere else you could exhibit on the floor? And I'm like, no. And he goes, all right, well, I just bought a new collection, so if you could figure something out, that'd be great. So I called up Kyle. Kyle's like, hey, you can sublet some space from a friend of ours, and so I did that. And I called up the dealer, and I'm like, yeah, I figured something out. We're all good. So I got onto the floor, and I brought so much stuff with me, and I had nowhere to store it. So I was literally like standing. I had half of a table with like 15 boxes that were stacked in front of me, and it was just such a tight spot. And I was having problems with the neighbors because like I just didn't have room to work. I didn't have room to engage with anyone. It was just a bad situation. So I went back to that dealer and I said, look, I will pay you if I can come and, set up by your booth. And he was like, all right, that's fine. So I was working the preview night while slowly moving things over. And then I had to go to a bank in the middle of the night in San Diego to get money out to pay the dealer so I could be on the floor the next day. And after that, everything worked out. But, I don't want to do a show of that size and capacity and run into those uncertainties at the last minute. Yeah. I want to know that, like, I got my booth. It's set up. I paid for it. This is my space. There are others like it, but this one is mine, and do it my way, And if I have to wait like 2 or 3 years before I could do that at San Diego again, then that's what it's going to be. But next time I do that show, it'll be I need my own booth space.
For a few years there, I was doing a booth share with like Tone Rodriguez and Gus Aguera. So we would just kind of, we schedule it out. It's like, okay, you've got the booth for this amount of time. You got the booth for that amount of time. And we would just take turns, and, all our stuff would be in the back, and we'd pull ours up and set up for our couple hours and then switch. And that worked out really well. But you almost have to do that because it's just so expensive to get a booth down there nowadays, and waiting lists. And then even once you get a table, there's no guarantee you're going to get a hotel room.
Oh yeah. Well, actually I never bothered with the hotel rooms. I've always gone through Airbnbs or like just talk to other creators and like we jump in. So if like, that's another reason why, going back to what Jay was saying earlier about helping creators out during crowdfunding campaigns, we also help each other out through conventions too. Like whenever C2E2 happens, like I always have people, I'm always hosting other creators. I hosted Fabrice and, some of the guys you had mentioned, because if I can save a fellow creator a couple $100 and they don't have to get a hotel, why not? Like, help each other out. It goes both ways.
I remember the late 90s and early 2000s, I would go to the convention and I had a bunch of artists and writers and stuff I was working with. And I would get one of the rooms at the Embassy Suites. And then I would take the suite part of the room, or the actual bedroom area, and said, okay, you all can have the rest. Fine floor. So, you'd open the door and be like Jonestown. You got 18 people spread around the room.
So, first of all, awesome conversation. Really. Bringing it back a little bit to the Kickstarters and the backer kit. Is what genre would you say your book is? And this is going to be for both y'all. We're going to start with Dan. What genre do you believe your book is? And do you have just a target audience? Do you have that one audience where you're like, these people are the ones that are going to get this book?
I don't know what to call the genre, but basically if you're reading Sunstone, you're my people on this book. That's the audience I'm looking for. Sunstone, Sweet Paprika. It's romantic comedy with, like, done at Cinemax. It's got the sex, it's got the nudity, but it's also got the characters, the romance, and it's got some pretty wild moments and stuff. But there's also those John McClane moments where the thing that made Die Hard work wasn't just Bruce Willis, but every once in a while he would look at the camera and give you that look like, can you believe this BS? Is this really happening? And I try to put those moments in there too, because the things that happened to Alex by being in Karma's life are so over the top, but they're all things that, or a lot of the things are things that happened when I was around, when I was doing photography. So it's like, I know these things happen. I know that world is very different, but you got to ground it in what people understand. And the bottom line is it's a relationship book, So it's got the relationship for those who want that, and it's got the sex for those that want that.
Nice. How about you, Onrie? What would you classify your book as, and is there a target audience you were trying to hit with that?
I would say all night. If you're a fan of I guess a lot of people come to me and they're like, "Oh man, this has such a '90s feel to it." So, and the best parts of the '90s, not the not Rob Liefeld, Captain America. If you there's none of that in that book. Not silly '90s, but like
giant shoulder pads, tiny feet.
Yeah. There's no pockets. Warline has no pockets. And we draw feet correctly for the most part.
Do you have the right quotient of mullets in it?
Yes, exactly. I don't think I've seen a single mullet in this book. We got mohawks though, but no. I would say anyone who is into science fiction. We have a very large demographic for this one. I think much larger than any of the other books I've done. Superheroes, science fiction, martial arts. This is a very martial artsy book. So anybody who's a fan of Yushin Shin is going to feel right at home with Warline, because it's got a very similar feel in terms of the art. We're just going in a different direction. It's superheroes, it's science fiction, it's martial arts, it's emotions, it's the story of relationships. If you're a fan of Invincible, you're gonna like Warline. Why the heck not? And I try not to think about it this way. Like, I always want to think that no matter what I'm doing, it's for everyone. I don't really kind of like focus on just one particular audience, because I think as creators, we're always trying to expand who our readership is. Certainly it falls into a category, and I can categorize the story, but who is it for? It's for everyone. I can't say it's just for one person or another, And not to say that Dan didn't have a great answer too. I think Dan had a good answer in the sense that, like, hey, if this is something that you're into, then you're going to feel right at home with this. I will say the same thing about Warline. If you're a fan of Yushin Shin and what we've done with that series from the beginning, you're going to feel right at home with Warline.
Yeah. The bottom line is we have the same target audience: people who like stories that have money and want to spend them.
Yes, essentially. Yeah, and the people that and everybody's taste changes. Like, I'll tell you, like, speaking of Invincible, I was never a fan of it. Like, I read maybe like the first 23 issues, and I was just like, I stopped reading it. I didn't care anymore. And then the TV show came out, and everybody was like, oh, the show is so great. I watched a couple episodes. I'm like, no, just not feeling it. I was never a real big Robert Kirkman fan. But now I started watching. I decided to give it another shot, because actually I've had a big change of heart since I've seen what Kirkman's done with the Hasbro universe, and how he has made it so different. Like, he's basically building his own MCU with the Hasbro line, and I think it's brilliant. Like, everything he's been doing over the last year has been brilliant. And so I gave Invincible another shot. The things that I was kind of like about. I was just like, you know what? Shut up for a minute. Stop being about it and just freaking watch it. Get through the first season at least. Give it the shot it deserves. And now I can't get enough of it. I'm almost through season 2. I'm excited that I have another season to go. If you don't give things a shot and you're going to write it off right away before you even have a chance to see what anyone does with it, you're doing yourself the disservice. And it's just kind of like, going into the whole thing about Robert Downey Jr. being cast as Dr. Doom, everybody having an opinion about this. It's just like, hold on a second. Why don't you see what he does with the character first, and then have your opinion? Just wait. Give the guy a shot. Give people a chance to prove themselves. And everybody's got an opinion, but just hold it. Wait.
Right. Plus, with the Dr. Doom thing, just think about what they've set up, a moment where Dr. Doom is fighting Spider-Man, his mask gets knocked off, and we see Peter Parker react to looking at Mr. Stark as the bad guy. That dramatic moment right there, that's worth the ticket to the theater.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it would have been interesting to not know that and for it to be a surprise, but here's the thing I also like about it too. Robert Downey Jr. has always been an actor that's looking for a challenge. He's looking to challenge himself. So everybody's like, oh, well, not everybody, but there are people who are saying, oh, this is just whitewashing. it's not. The guy's trying to challenge himself. He wasn't going to come back and play Tony Stark because he nailed that role. He was Tony Stark. He was tired of being Tony Stark. Now he wants to show that he can be the bad guy too. He can do something completely different. He will give you something that you don't expect. And you're either going to like it or hate it. We might be sitting here in 2 years saying this is awful and it was as bad as Jared Leto's Joker, which I actually never saw. But, I know a lot of people complain about that.
Yeah. But also you got to look at what Marvel did. It was the best PR move they could have made. They're coming off of a movie that just opened for $430 million. And then they roll out their most popular actor teamed up with their most successful directors coming back on their biggest franchise.
Yep.
And they tore up Hall H.
Yep.
That reaction is what they needed to get all the naysayers and stuff to at least have to stop for a second.
Yep. And even though we're talking about this as opposed to our crowdfunding campaigns, I actually kind of enjoy talking about this a little more because I've been talking about my campaign so much. What's great about it is I've always had this mentality of a rising tide raises all ships. When Marvel and DC are successful and we're seeing these things, good things happening for them, that's going to be good for us too, because that brings more people's attention to the comics. If more people start buying Infamous Iron Man as a result of this, there is a chance that they might pick up our books too. And that's what we really need to be focused on as a whole. Comics as a community, as a place to come together. And Dan, I think we both do a good job of this as show hosts on the experience of leaving that door open for the fans, because I guarantee you that people who watch our shows on a regular basis are people who regularly read our comics too. And who knows when we will get that shot at writing, something for Marvel or DC one day. It's like those people are going to be able to continuously engage with us, and that's important,
And just think about what it's going to mean for not only comic fans, but the comic industry, the film industry, and the economy. If we get to July of next year and both Superman and the Fantastic Four are big hits, it doesn't matter. You don't have to pick one or the other type of thing. If James Gunn rolls out an amazing Superman movie and Matt Shackman gives us an amazing Fantastic Four movie, that's going to be great for everybody. That's going to get people walking into shops to look for those books. It's going to get theater owners, being able to, sell tickets and merchandise and all that stuff. It's going to be a boost to the economy, and it's going to, just make things happen again.
Yeah, 100%. So we only got about 4 minutes left. So I got kind of a rapid fire list of questions for the both of you.
All right.
Not really a question, but give me your last ditch pitch for your book. Why should people check it out? Tell me where we can find you, not only on your socials, but on the experience. And on a cold day, what soup and sandwich would you like?
I feel Jenna might have influenced that last one.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah. You want to go first, Onrie?
Yeah, go for it, Dan.
Okay. Last little pitch on what happens when a straight-laced photographer gets pulled into the pretty chaotic and glamorous world of supermodels. It's a lot different than you expect and pretty damn wild, but also the feelings in the heart is the same. We're all the same under this or inside. And, that's the key on that. Finding me, I am on all of the social medias, either as Dan Wickline or DanWick70. I think Instagram and Threads is DanWick70. Made that before I knew I actually wanted to use my name as, to get out there. And I host the Dan Wickline show. Again, clever naming there. On Thursday afternoons, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific here on The Experience. I do a news recap on Tuesdays that get put up. And I do a show on Sunday nights called Pop Go the Writers that then gets replayed on the experience when Kyle remembers to schedule it.
So, Onrie Kompan, Warline is my latest project. Warline, you can find it right now on Kickstarter. You can find me on Facebook. That's always the best place to find me. Instagram is @okompan. Twitter is @okompan. Warline is a story that I think speaks to anyone who is interested in relationships between family. It's a personal story, and it's one that I think a lot of people who deal with angry people in their lives will be able to relate to. Yeah, there's that. And I'm also on the experience every Tuesday night, Kicking It with Onrie. We're on at 7 p.m. Pacific and 10 p.m. Eastern. I'll be on the air tomorrow night. Jay is my producer, and we're going to get into some trouble. We'll probably get canceled. Maybe. Jay's not really good at canceling me, but I usually deserve a canceling here and there because some things happen. Didn't happen on the show.
We forgot the soup and sandwich thing.
Oh, the soup and sandwich thing. Okay, yeah. So Warline is like a medium rare steak, and his daughter is like cream spinach, and you will like the cream spinach. You'll ask for seconds on the cream spinach. The bad guy is like sushi being served at the steakhouse. No one does that, and that's why he's the bad guy and needs to die.
Oh goodness!
I don't think he answered the actual question, but I like his answer.
That's a good answer.
For me, I've recently come across a recipe for tortellini soup that I make.
Oh wow!
I absolutely love. So I'll go with that. And sandwich wise, I just started making these. You take biscuits and you separate them, and you put roast beef, and I put mozzarella because that's my favorite cheese, together with a little horseradish. And then you bake the biscuits, and it puts all together these little sandwiches, little au jus to go with it. It's great.
That sounds really delicious. That sounds really
yeah. You started writing comics in pandemic. I learned to cook.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah. So I'll be my cooking and crochet show is scheduled for the experience later this year.
I refused to cook during the campaign, through the lockdowns, and decided to start writing. So I did the opposite.
All right, folks, we got to get out of here. Comic Collectibles is next. For this video, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications so you can see all the awesome content we're going to have. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Onrie. You guys have an awesome day. We will see y'all later.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.